Hello and welcome to a new video. You might be wondering, why am I standing here with a bunch of fake flowers in my living room? Because we are going to do some spring decorating today. But first of all, welcome to my living room. This is actually the room that I told you guys I would be renovating first when I announced that we were moving into this Victorian seaside Scottish tenement flat. And indeed, it was the room I painted first, but there were so many issues with this room that took forever to fix that I actually ended up not really showing you anything about this room yet. These things included the ceiling basically caving in right above me here. So we had to get that fixed and secured and then replastered. So we're now finally at the point where the room is starting to look a little bit better. I still need to paint the ceiling. It is currently just raw plaster, but the room is absolutely massive and really high. So I just haven't really gotten to it. But because the fireplace is now fixed, I thought we could take a little look at it. I could chat to you guys. We'd have a little cozy time as I do a floral arrangement over the fireplace. I had my Christmas arrangement on there until early March, and Jack was a bit like, when is that ever gonna go? And I'm like, maybe never. But then the guys came to do the fireplace, so I took everything off and got myself some fresh fake flowers so that we can make something springy together. So now these are the flowers in question. I got them all on sale, so I spent like £18 on all of these, which is very exciting. I obviously have some reds and some whites, and then I've got these light green eucalyptus ones. So we will see how we can arrange that. I also have some wisterias here that are kind of like dangling a little bit. So we'll just see what looks best. But first, let me show you the fireplace. So just to give you a little recap on what actually happened with the fireplace and why having it finished is so exciting. When we first moved in, there was this little very shitty plasticky fake fireplace thingy sitting in front of a hole. So that was just electric and you could like plug it in, but it really honestly didn't look like anything. It had this white surround that is now in the sewing room, and behind it there were just like these red tiles, and we didn't actually mind them, but they were probably from the 50s, and the entire half was also covered with these tiles. But if you stood on them, they split into multiple pieces. So we ended up, just from like having to move things around, having all of these broken tiles that just looked really not very nice. Then also we took out all of the laminate from the room and had the original floorboards worked up. It didn't really work anymore. It didn't really look very nice. So we were considering getting the hearth retiled again. But just because of how absolutely massive the hearth is, it doesn't really make sense why it's so big. The original one wouldn't have been this big, but when they did the tiles, they just made it absolutely massive, ruined the original floorboards underneath it because they put concrete over it, so there was no saving the floorboards. So we just had to go with a hearth that was, again, absolutely massive. So the company we hired could have also done tiles, and they had really nice tiles that we were considering using, but would have been twice the price of this slab of slate. And the slate was already really expensive. So we just decided to go with the slate because it's just very calm, very neutral. It works really well with a cast iron fireplace. And then obviously you're noticing this fireplace is not the one that was in here before. So this is actually an original Victorian fireplace that we sourced from eBay. I think it came from somewhere in England, had it shipped to our old flat. And you might remember that for a while it was just sitting in the sewing room, and the sewing room back in the old flat was tiny. So it just kept becoming smaller and smaller with the fireplace around it, because we also sourced that from somewhere. Had everything delivered, and then when the movers came, they moved it into this flat. So now we're on the 3rd floor. So they weren't overly happy about carrying this absolutely heavy cast iron fireplace up here. But they did it anyways, and I'm very grateful because now it's finally been installed and it looks stunning, and it looks like it should have been here all along. The one thing we were a little bit worried about is this fireplace is actually quite wide and deep. So most Edwardian fireplaces are actually a little bit smaller. So you've got kind of like tiles on the side, but the actual insert that goes into the wall is quite small. So this one's bigger, and we bought it before we actually had the keys to the flat. So when we moved in, we realized that the hole behind the fake fireplace was maybe about this big, and the hole this one required was probably about this big. So we were like, have we just had some people carry this up 3 flights of stairs and then it won't actually work? So that has been a worry for about half a year. But luckily, the guys came in to do the fireplace and they realized that the hole in the wall was just bricked up they ripped the bricks out, and the original wall was just as big as this fireplace, which indicates that the original fireplace would have been a similar size. So everything's coming back to how it was actually meant to be. The fireplace surround is also antique, so everything we've built in is antique. It looks stunning. It's the center of the room. In our old flat, we actually had this really massive fireplace, which I absolutely adored, but it was quite high up. So we couldn't put a TV over it. So we always had the TV on a different wall, which meant the sofa never actually faced the fireplace. So it always felt a little bit off center, which is why in this case we ended up having the sofa across from the fireplace and then the TV over the fireplace, which has been causing a lot of controversy. Because people are just saying it's just way too high, like you shouldn't have a TV this high, but it's kind of like, it's just a TV. Like for me, it's background noise. I much prefer having the fireplace in the center over the TV. So the TV just happens to be there, and it will give us a neck ache if we watch a lot of TV, but then maybe that's a sign for us to not do that. Okay, so with the renovation backstory out of the way, let's actually look at the flowers we have and do a little bit of arranging. 4 of the eucalyptuses, which are just meant to be the base. Then I got 2 of the wisterias, which are meant to dangle over the sides. Then I got 4 of the red flowers and 2 more of these flowers that I actually don't know what they are, but I'm sure someone can tell me what kind of flowers they are. So this is what I've got. I will start by taking all of the tags off and also shortening the stems because they're way too long, and see whether that is actually enough or whether I will need to steal some fake flowers from the sewing room, because that might not actually be enough for our big fireplace. Okay, let's go. So as I am cutting off tags and shortening stems, I thought I'd come sit down and talk to you guys about things I have recently enjoyed. Because I feel like life has been really scary lately with like impending World War III and also just generally the situation on the job market. Like I've been applying for jobs for 6 months now, and I do actually have an interview coming up, which is really exciting because there's like one thing about not getting jobs, but there's a completely different thing about not even getting interviews with like, so I'm not even worth considering. So I'm glad that I have an interview. It's for a social media position with the Uni of Glasgow, which I would absolutely love to do because it's for the College of Arts and Humanities. And as you know, I am very much an artsy girl. I just happened to accidentally end up in science. So that is something I would love to do. Other than that, I've recently finished the new season of Bridgerton, which I was also watching in my last sewing video. I really enjoyed the beginning. I feel like the costumes just were, other than Eloise's like masquerade ball thing that she was wearing, costumes were much better this season, even though I hated that scene when Sophie was like getting dressed again after her having, you know, sexy times. And she just put like this dress on, and it was so obvious that the back must have had a zipper and that her like little under chemise was attached to it. Oh, I hated that. Hated that. But other than that, I felt like the season was generally a little bit less annoying. Like I wouldn't go as far as saying like I loved it, but it was just less outrageous. I have also finished, let's see whether I can actually cut this. Hold on. Maybe not. Come on. I can break it. Well, that's much easier. I also listened to a book, an audiobook. So I'm not normally an audiobook listener, but with having been knitting so very much, I felt like listening to an audiobook was actually quite useful. It was nice. So I ended up listening to A Shield of Sparrows, which a lot of people on the internet have been praising. But I have to admit, I didn't rate it very highly. Like, it wasn't bad by any means. The narrator was a little bit uncomfortable to listen to because she was also reading the male voice, but she changed her voice very much when she talked for him, and his name was the Guardian. it just was a little bit silly. So they were just, I don't know. It wasn't bad, but it was not a book that I would be desperately wanting to reread and tell my friends about, if that makes sense. And with like everything going on, I feel like I just needed a little bit of a distraction from life and applying for jobs and just news and everything. So I started writing my book again because, as you know, I've been writing The Map of Stars Unbound for 3 years now. I mentioned this in a previous video, but in case you don't know yet. So it's basically a late Victorian fantasy, romantasy story of a group of academics who believe that there is a lost city hidden in this sea of fog. Then the king funds a royal expedition to go to Eversley, and Elsie, the main character, has developed this map, and they're just following her map to Eversley, and she's like the expert on the everlasting, and she just wants to discover it. And then we've got Tiernan, the captain of the guard, obviously. It's just a story that's like really dear to my heart. I've kind of been telling you guys about this, that I love explorer stories and kind of like stories of lost civilizations and lost cities. So it's very much like that. So very Atlantis, but Eversley is set in an ocean of fog that's kind of like the Scottish Highlands. So it's very much them traveling through these mountains, and everything's very Scottish. There's like the moors and the hills and the gorse and the heather, and it's just very moody and very dark academia as well. I've just been enjoying it. It just brings me joy. So I've been working on it again. So I hope that maybe, especially with my impending unemployment, I might actually be able to rewrite the draft in a way that I'm happy with and proofread it and get it out to more beta readers and eventually share it with you guys, because I do really like the book. Which, you know, even if it never gets published, I enjoy it, and I think that's the most important thing. I've just written a book that I wanted to read, even if no one else ever reads it. We've cut all of the stems off, so let's actually do a little bit of decorating. So this fireplace is actually so big that I need to keep the camera quite far away. So this is the moment where I'm realizing I should have really by now bought a wireless microphone. So make sure to like and subscribe and comment so that I can afford to get a new microphone for my future videos. But this is what we're working with. We've got Jack's massive speaker thingy on here and lots of plugs behind it, which is partly why we're doing this floral arrangement, to just hide all of this. Obviously the TV isn't looking very good, but bear with me. Our old TV that we used to have in the living room, like way back, that is less quality, and it's not an OLED or whatever Jack will tell you now, because I don't actually care. So this one is apparently better and bigger, but the smaller one we had was a Samsung frame, and we had like a custom made frame for it that looks like a picture. Obviously it doesn't look like a picture, but it just looks a little bit less ugly, like a TV. So getting a frame made for this in today's economy is just really expensive. So what I'm planning to do is I have ordered the molding for the frame. So I'm just gonna make it myself, because there is nothing that can stop me. But for now, flowers first. It's like £1 tags on these as well. How many more tags do you have to put on them? Yes, everywhere else. Well, that's great. So what I'm gonna start out with is the greenery, just arranging these evenly over the speaker, kind of seeing what we've got once they're arranged. So I'm not working with like tons of room in front of the speaker, so I have to balance them a little bit, but luckily the fireplace is high enough that the cat can't actually get to it. So I'm hopeful that she won't be throwing them down. Also, it might be plainly obvious, but I'm not actually good at doing floral arrangements. I feel like when I did the floral arrangements in my garden house, all the way back when I had my kind of like filming area in the garden house back in the old flat, people were kind of asking me like, oh, have you done floral arrangement? Like, how did you decide to do that? And I'm like, I just throw them on here and hope for the best. All of these are slightly flexible, so you can actually just like manipulate them. Make sure that they don't stick out in front of the TV, or I will get in trouble with Jack, because we couldn't possibly have floral decorations obstruct our beautiful screen while we're watching Codico videos. So I want to say, I don't know if anyone here agrees with me, and I'm interested to hear this. I personally am not a big fan of like big surround systems and like big screens and all of that. I feel like I much prefer watching stuff on my iPad, because I do actually like being close to the screen. Like, it makes me feel like I'm more part of a movie if it's close to me, rather than it being somewhere on a big screen and the sounds coming from all around me. So back in the days when I lived by myself before Jack, I would just watch everything on my iPad. Like, I used to have a TV, but I just prefer watching stuff on my iPad. Maybe want them here. I do want it to be somewhat symmetrical. Like, I'm definitely not an asymmetric girl. So I was originally hoping to buy like a longer garland that I can use as a base and then just put things in. But the problem being, with it being spring now, all of the garlands they had were like very pastel-y, and pastels just not quite me. So I'm talking like light blues and light pinks and all of these colors that spring is known for, and that's why I usually buy all of my stuff in autumn and then they can't really buy anything until autumn comes again. It's getting somewhere, but it feels like what I have left here of my red thingies won't be enough to fill the middle. No, need to be somewhere around here instead. That leaves me still with a lot of speaker to be seen. So I actually thought this would be enough plants, but it definitely isn't. So I need some more that goes in front of here and maybe a little bit more on the side so that it goes a bit higher. So luckily I have tons of fake plants in the sewing room, so I'll just pick some from there. Okay, so this is what I found in the sewing room. Most of the colors I had there for flowers were mainly pinkish, so I didn't think that would perfectly work with this, but I think there's a very light pink here, which is basically like the eucalyptus here, just in pink, which makes me wonder, is there pink eucalyptus? But it's the same ones as these, just slightly different color. And then I've got these faint pink roses, I think. And then I've got some poppy flowers that were left over from my Sophie gommage necklace. I'll take the red ones back out and I'll put the poppy into the center like that. And then I can arrange. And the pink eucalyptus is meant to go on the sides here. I'll fluff it up a little bit. And I've got the roses left, which I'll just put in the center to fill the center out a little bit more. So I've done a little bit more futzing around. I've arranged things, moved things, brought in some more flowers, moved things around, sat on the sofa where Jack normally sits to double check that nothing would obstruct the TV because he'd be annoyed about that. There's also a little screen on the speaker where it says like which thing it's connected to, which Jack said was important and he needed to still be able to see. So that is also still visible from where he sits. So I think we are done now, and it looks very fresh and light and definitely obstructs the speaker, so it looks much better. And I think it looks really cute. So I will show you the end result and I hope you like it as well. And we're finished! So I think this turned out really, really cute. I think it freshens up the entire room and brings me into spring mood, which is normally non-existent, but I feel like ever since moving to the western coast of Scotland, it's just been raining so very much. So I'm almost excited when I see the sunshine, other than when it's a day I need to take pictures, because I still don't really enjoy taking pictures in the sunshine. But generally speaking, I think it hides the speakers well. It makes the room look nice and welcoming. I just feel like flowers always do that, where everything just looks nicer if there's flowers. And I know it would have been probably nicer if this was real flowers, but I've got a cat. And if any of these were real and fell down, she would eat them and die, so we're not gonna do that. And on the other hand, this weird depression overcomes me whenever I've got flowers. So basically, I love having fresh flowers, but then I see them withering and dying, and it reminds me that nothing's permanent and that everything fades away eventually and that we're all gonna die. And so I just feel like every time I have flowers, they just make me sad. So I prefer fake flowers. I don't know if I'm the only one here. But generally speaking, this is another step in our progress of getting the living room finished. So obviously I talked about doing the frame for the TV. And if you guys are interested, we can do that together, even though I actually don't know how I'm going to do it. So this is going to be a lot of improvising. Other than that, we have 2 radiators in this room, and they're currently kind of like dirty off-white, not in an off-white way that would match like the skirting boards and all the white bits of the walls and the woodwork. So they're looking a bit yucky. They need painting. But the thing is, I was planning to paint them the same color as the walls, just to make them a little bit less obvious. And I was planning to do that right after painting the walls. I already have the paint, I have everything here. But then I learned that actually the radiators need to stay off for 2 days after painting them. And let me tell you, Jack hates being cold in the morning. I'm German. I do Stoßlüften. So I feel like whenever Jack leaves the house, I just like open all the windows for 15 minutes and get some fresh air in. But he just wants to be warm every morning to get out of bed. Like, who does he think we are? We don't have that kind of money, but knowing him, we'll probably have the radiators on in the morning until like June. So when the time finally comes where he stops needing the radiators in the morning, I will paint the radiators as well. And then the obvious issue being the ceiling being just plaster colored. So that will also happen one day, but I'm also painfully aware that you're meant to dilute paint for the first coat over plaster, which is going to be dripping everywhere. So that is a job of future me when I have handed in my PhD and I am properly unemployed and have more time. But then probably I'll just continue writing my book and film videos and do other things, because I never actually get to the point where I'm so bored that I want to paint the ceiling. Also, the walls are like 3.5 meters high. So I have to be like balancing on the very highest ladder and I just don't like it. So I hope you enjoyed this little adventure. I really hope that I can get this to you as like an in-between video and not as like a Friday main video. But then also I have quite a few busy weekends ahead of me and I'm not sure how I will get on with my sewing. So this might become like a full week video. So I hope this entertained you one way or another and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. So